Hello and welcome everyone, and thank you so much for joining us this morning for our Leaner and Greener Refresh session. I'm Patricia Kingston, Corporate Events Officer at Tourism NI, and it's my absolute pleasure to welcome you all along today. I'm also delighted to welcome back Tina O'Dwyer from the tourism space, who delivered much of our Leaner and Greener series previously, and she's going to be leading us once again in today's session. We've got a jam-packed presentation today, and over the course of the next hour, Tina's going to be looking back over the topics we covered in our last series and helping us all to refocus and reprioritise, and hopefully also identify some opportunities to cut costs within your business. Tina will also be sharing some case studies with us so you can see firsthand what our industry colleagues are doing and what might be working for them. As some of you are joining us again and some of you are with us for the first time, I'm going to actually kick off with a couple of quick polls so we can get a feel for exactly who's on with us today and what stage you're all at. So you'll get your poll fingers warmed up first off. The first poll will pop up there shortly. Can you please let us know if you've attended any of our previous Leaner and Greener webinar sessions? So that one's just a yes or no to ease you in. Okay. Thank you so much. And our second one is just trying to get a little bit of a feel on where you are now with your Leaner and Greener journey. So are you just starting out? Are you a little bit along but still really in beginner mode? Would you maybe see yourself as an intermediate stage? Or maybe you're actually firing away there and you're feeling a little bit more advanced? Okay, and let's see now if we got the results of those polls. So in terms of any previous Leaner and Greener webinars, 67% haven't attended them and 33% have, so that's great. We've got some nice newbies, new fresh faces here today. Okay. And in terms of your Leaner and Greener journey, it's a bit of a mix. So we don't have anybody in the advanced category, which is really to be expected, but 19% just starting out, about half of you, 50% at that beginner stage, and 31% at the intermediate stage. So that's really good. That's really useful, and that will help Tina as she's running through her presentation as well. Following the main presentation, we'll also be having a short Q&A session with Tina. So if you do think of any questions at all during today's session, just pop those into the chat box in your control panel at any time, and I'll be picking up as many of those as possible at the end. So we have a jam-packed day, as I said. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Tina now, and we'll get rolling. So good morning, Tina. Over to you.
Good morning. Thank you, Patricia. Good morning to everybody on the call. Thank you very much for joining. Yeah, the poll there is interesting. We have about, it seems 70% who haven't attended a webinar before, close to that, and about 70% who think they're in the beginner to intermediate stages of Leaner and Greener. And I'd say that's representative of people overall in the tourism industry. I'm going to run through the webinar, I suppose, making sure you can see my screen there. Let me know if you can't. I'm going to go through this and talk as I suppose we go through the slides. My name is Tina. As Patricia said, I was involved in delivering the webinars for energy, waste and water in this particular series earlier this year, and another trainer delivered the food waste webinar. So there were 4 in total. So we have 1 hour to kind of remind what was done over 4 to 5 hours previously. So you're not going to get the full detail of the how to do everything, but you are going to get the pointers and the overview and kind of a reset, I guess, in terms of Leaner and Greener. Timely at the end of the year. Where are you now? Where exactly are you now? What kind of things do you need to be taking into account? And where can you get resources that will help you put together an approach and a plan and a strategy going into 2024? So today we're doing a quick overview of what was covered so far. Then we're going to go into what is the Leaner and Greener roadmap, so kind of the whole approach to becoming Leaner and Greener in your business, and the step-by-step Leaner and Greener business management model. We're going to touch on carbon footprint because it is such an important topic right now. And I'm also going to point you to some of the case studies that will help you on your journey or supporting others in their journey as well. So the quick overview, I guess I'm mindful right now that we have people on the call. I've seen who's registered for the call. We have people from businesses, small and large. We have people from single person businesses to large, over 100 people, over a couple of hundred people in their businesses. We have a number from state agencies and the public sector who would be involved in supporting businesses. So we have the full gamut of leaner and greener. Not everyone is actually taking the actions, but everybody is involved in it. I heard a quote recently, I'm not sure who to attribute it to, but it was that sustainability isn't just on the agenda, it is the agenda. It's everybody's agenda. And I suppose that's what I want to speak to when I mentioned this slide about mindset. Leaner and greener is a set of tactical actions that you can take, but it fits into a much wider context of the mindset of sustainability. So sustainability is more than just a set of actions. It is actually about a way of seeing the business and a whole kind of approach that, whether you're signed up to it because you agree with it yourself or whether it's because of external circumstances such as legal requirements or trade expectations or consumer expectations, this is the journey we're headed on. And I guess it's a little bit more than just taking actions. However, that said, today we are talking about taking actions and practical actions, but I just wanted to kind of state that there. I got an email this morning from booking.com with some new research that they have released that shows again increasing consumer interest in this area. But one of the quotes I wrote down from that is sustainability isn't just a buzzword, it's a lifestyle. And I think that's a really important thing for tourism and hospitality businesses. You're part of the overall lifestyle of consumers that are moving ever closer and ever more interested in this whole area of sustainability. So for leaner and greener, we had looking back, we covered 4 areas: energy, waste, water, and food waste. Those are the 4 big areas it comes to in relation to carbon footprint, in relation to getting leaner in your business, and also in relation to getting greener. And this is why I suppose the series is called what it is. Systematically managing these resources will reduce the running costs of your business. That is a fact, making you leaner. And they will also reduce carbon emissions from your business, which makes you greener. And it's what you would call a win-win. It's also what some people call a no-brainer. It is good for business and it is good for the environment. I know we had a question in advance and people might be thinking it, well, isn't it going to cost me more money to invest in things like energy or waste systems? And I think I'll cover that later. The important thing to bear in mind is there are a lot of actions that are no cost or low cost. And then you move up on a tier. But as you move up to the higher levels of expenditure, you are looking at how you can estimate the return on investment. It all pays back over time. It depends how long it pays back over and what that actual payback is. And I'm going to mention that later. But it is pretty much evidence-based that 95% of what you will do to become greener will also make you leaner. In terms of priorities, energy is the #1 priority in terms of reducing both your carbon footprint and also the costs within your business. Now, that's a general statement. If you don't have a buildings business or an energy heavy business, that may not be the case. But in general, energy is #1 and food waste would be #2. In terms of greatest impact, again, that's only relevant if you have a food part to your business. So everybody will be judging it according to their own circumstances. If you're on this call, and I know there are people on this call, for example, who are outdoor activity providers, or like I say, working in a public agency, and you're not actually either using a lot of energy, creating a lot of waste, using a lot of water, you're outdoors all the time, or you're not actually yourself doing it. What has become really, really important in tourism, and I think is going to increase, is understanding your supply chain as well, and showing that those you partner with and those you collaborate with are actually on this journey. So if you're an outdoor provider who links in with a restaurant or links in with a hotel or something like that, knowing what they do, understanding what they do, and being able to converse in that is becoming increasingly important. So stay tuned, even if it's not immediately relevant to you. You will find on the Tourism NI website a series of guides and templates. Now, this is the full detail of what I'm just touching on in summary today. There's a guide to energy management, a guide to water conservation, a guide to waste management, and also the food waste management, which is the getting started booklet there. They're all available to download. They're all freely available. They are accompanied by the recording of the webinar at the time and the presentation that would have been given. You see a little spreadsheet there lurking in the background. There are all the templates you could need to run the system available in there, explained in there, and downloadable. So if you are wanting to move into this, area and really taking action, I just want to assure you that the resources you need are there. Now, they do certainly take a bit of reading, and they're not lengthy, but you do need to kind of apply yourself to learning what's in them. And we're going to touch on that today as well. There's the link to where you'll find the resources, tourismni.com/leaner greener, recordings, slide decks, PDF guides, case studies, the works. So the roadmap, what is the roadmap? I guess I think there's so much conversation right now about reducing our footprint, reducing our emissions, increasing our sustainability, reducing our costs, that the temptation is to just start doing it. And people start to think at the big expenditure items. I'm here to tell you that's not the place to start. It's to start by taking a step back and actually following a methodology that will work for you now in the short term, but also over the long term. And I'll explain why that's important as well. So the roadmap, effectively, it's the same as any other process in your business, but I would say being methodical about it is even more important in this area. You need to establish your starting point. Number one, where are you now? Then you need to set a target. Where do you want to get to? How will you get there is your action plan. How will you track progress requires you to monitor and measure. And how will you keep everyone informed? You need to be able to review and report. Not just for yourself, but also for your trade partners, your consumer, potentially your local authority, funders, certifiers, trade partners, all of those things. You do need evidence of activity in this area, and that's becoming increasingly important going forward. So it is really worth your while to establish, and I know so many of you are in the early stages, where am I right now? No matter what that level of performance is, that's your baseline starting point. It's the benchmark against which you'll measure everything else. Take time to establish that. The guides will help you do that. Then you set a target. At this point in your journey, if you're a beginner, that will be your best estimate, but it will be a target to reduce and improve. How you reach the target is some of the actions we have for you, and then we'll talk through the monitoring and measuring. So the question is, how much, be it water or energy, is used in your business, or how much waste is generated? Really, you would do these individually. You would do one at a time. I think it's a lot for anybody to try and take on all three of them at once. Find the one which is most important to your business. It is most likely energy, followed by food waste. But pick one, get your system working with that one, and then it's easy to transfer it over to the other two. So it's how much is used, where is it used, or where is the waste generated, the actions you can take to save the consumption and money, and developing an action plan. So that is the step-by-step approach. You must go through the stages of understanding where you are right now, how much is used, how much waste is generated, where it is used, and then start making a plan. Only when you measure and monitor can you truly manage consumption and save money. Avoid going straight to action. The data allow you to clearly see areas for priority action and calculate return on investment. If you're early in your journey and you're scratching your head and you're saying, gosh, there's so much going on here, there's so many resources, there's so much advice, where do I actually start? Start with gathering the data. That it absolutely won't lead you astray. You cannot make any decisions about what to work on until you can transparently see where your greatest costs are and where your greatest carbon emissions are. You can only do that if you take time to gather the data. The one thing about the leaner and greener journey is it is not about hunch. It is not about what you think. It is actually about data. Data that informs your actions, and actions that lead to a change in the data. So ultimately that lead to reduction in your costs and a reduction in your emissions. You need to be able to show data for funding, awards, certifications, and carbon footprint calculations. And they're just the things off the top of my head. I think you need to show it for employees who get involved in this to know that there's an impact on their an impact from their actions. You'll need to show it to investors if that's your case. You need to show it to boards of management or advisory boards or charitable boards. It is all going to be about the data. The time has passed when we can just say, oh, I installed solar panels, so I'm doing the right thing. It's just moved on a level from there. Measuring is essential. If you take nothing else away, take that away. So the step-by-step to doing that, there are 8 key steps across whether you start with energy, waste, or water, and it's the same system you will replicate in each of those. Put somebody in charge, that's number 1. Then calculate your units and costs, establish your benchmark, that's basically where you're starting now, and then commit to monitoring monthly. So right now at the end of 2023, you can look back over the whole year and you can get a year's worth of data. You could get one figure for how much electricity you used in kilowatt hours and how much money that costs you. You could get one figure for your water, you could get one figure for your waste. Once you have that done, and that's not going to take long, once you have that done, then it's worthwhile to measure that monthly rather than annually, because you just get so much more data when you do that. And if you do it monthly or bi-monthly, whenever your bill comes in, and whenever you get an electricity bill or an oil bill, if it's somebody's job to sit down for 5 or 10 minutes and update a spreadsheet, it's easily done. It's not a big task, and over the year you gather really good data. Conduct an audit. You do have to look around your own business and see what's actually happening. So that's where you find out where energy and water is being consumed and how. That's observing the staff and visitor behavior. Then you're able to analyze all this data and prioritize your actions, and then you create your action plan. So you can see action is number 8. There's a bit of groundwork before you take the action. So appointing a green team or manager, it's clear that somebody needs to be in charge. This actually needs to be somebody's job. Nobody's going to really fit it in just alongside other stuff. I don't mean a full-time job, obviously they will fit it in, but that it's definitely part of somebody's job, and it's clear who is responsible for it. There's a question mark, I suppose. I've been advising appoint a green team manager for about 10 or 15 years. I think increasingly we're seeing it's almost misleading to say just one person is in charge of this. It's like the entire model and mindset of the business needs to move over to a leaner and greener model. So giving it to one person, there's a danger that just compartmentalizes, oh, that's Tina's job and she can look after it. Actually, it's everybody's job. So from a leadership level at the top of the organization, whether you're one person or whether you're in charge of 300 people, creating that culture that actually this is everybody's business. One person might be coordinating, but they're not the only person responsible. Annual units and costs, how do you calculate them? So I've been talking about that. What do you do? I'm going to take the example of energy. As I said, this is broken down step by step in each of the individual webinars and the guidebooks that you have access to. So you have to log all your sources of energy. So you may have electricity, you may have oil, you may have wood pellets, you may have gas. Most places have several. So there's, for example, just example. One of the challenges you see there with energy is electricity and gas are measured in kilowatt hours. Other gas and oil is measured in litres, and something like wood might be measured in kilograms. So they're not immediately comparable. And I mean, you'll see them coming in on your bills like that. You need to convert them all to a common currency, and the common currency of energy is kilowatt hours. And then I'll show you how to do that. You calculate how many kilowatt hours each energy source provides, and you can calculate the average unit cost for each energy type. It just means that you can compare, what is wood costing me compared to electricity? What's it costing in money, and what's it costing in terms of carbon emissions? So here's a worksheet that is available for download with the energy guide. So take those ones, for example. You can see that the columns in green there are ones that you have to fill in. The ones in white are pre-filled, so you don't have to worry about those. Once you fill in electricity, so you get the annual units from your bill. You get it from your electricity bill, your oil bill, your gas bill. It is written on it. Most of us look at our bill and we see, oh, it cost, whatever it was this month, that's the bill, and we don't question it, we pay it, or it's gone up and we get a bit horrified and we still pay it. We don't actually read the bill, but on the bill is all the information you're going to need about usage. So you need, again, look at the webinars for that. If you fill this in, and it's interesting, it's an example of the insight you can get on your business. These are sample, and they're from a year ago, from when we did the webinar initially, which was this time last year, so they may be out of date. But if you fill in your annual units and your annual cost, all from the bill, you see how the third column from the right there, average unit, fills in. So you can see there, for example, the electricity at that time was the most expensive, and the others were significantly cheaper in terms of per unit, per kilowatt hour. They're the bits you fill in yourself. So that's your data. Now you're comparing like with like. You can do the same for waste, for landfill waste, recycling waste, and food waste, and you do the same for water, except in water you only have one measurement, and you find out how much everything is costing you. Then the benchmark. Why do you want a benchmark? I mentioned it at the beginning, because it allows you to track your own performance over time. That's your starting point. You are always going to refer back to your starting point. Okay, we started using, X kilowatt hours per year. Now we're using X kilowatt hours per year. So it's something you can compare to your own performance over time, but you can also compare against others in the industry. And I think we're going to see a drive to create industry standard benchmarks where you'll know, for example, what an average hotel, what an average activity provider, what an average visitor attraction might be. And I think we don't have that data right now, to be honest, but we are going to see it emerging as more and more people do this. So back to this spreadsheet, for example, the important thing we're filling in on this one is benchmark. This is an example of a restaurant. So let's say 20,000 covers per year in this restaurant. So if I say, and it fills in the last two columns there. So electricity was 39 cent or cent a unit. Kilowatt hour benchmark was 150 per cover. It was costing 1 kilowatt hour per cover in that restaurant in that year, and it was costing 59 cent per cover. The reason that's important is if your business grows, so if we were doing 20,000 covers this year, but we do 30,000 next year, obviously the amount of electricity we use is going to go up. The only thing that will really measure how you're performing in terms of reducing consumption is your cost per cover. And that's why that's important. Your business will grow, your business may grow. It's not your absolute consumption anybody is interested in, it is your consumption per cover. And it's also per cover that allows you to compare it with another restaurant of a different size or in a different location. The benchmark is the figure of comparability. It's not essential to do this, but I think from a business management perspective, I think it gives real perspective on it. You can see there, for example, how wood pellets are a lot cheaper per cover than both in terms of kilowatt hours and in terms of costs. So you're starting to see where you can make an impact, where your biggest impact is, where you should invest in order to reduce costs and reduce kilowatt hours. So again, you'll find all these templates in the resource area. So once you've established that, there's a bit of work in getting that together, but I don't think it's a massive amount of work. It's, what would it take for somebody to find your energy bills for the last year and fill those into that pre-made spreadsheet? A few hours realistically if somebody applied themselves to that. And then once you have that, you can do it once a month in a matter of minutes, literally in a matter of minutes. So this is the system that really we would advise you to set up rather than just start moving on action. So here's an example of a monthly, this time I'm using waste. This is available in the waste section of the website. So this is a monthly spreadsheet all ready for you. In the green sheets, all you need to fill in there month by month is your total kg and your total cost. Then you start to see tourism is a seasonal industry. Then you really start to see what the difference is in different months and in different seasons. Or it helps you at a time when for example, there might be a festival on, or you have a particularly large tour, or particularly quiet times when you've more staff, less staff, etc. It allows you to get behind your business and again, understand in greater detail where your consumption is and how you can do something about it. The next step is do an internal audit. So that's really setting up your data management system to give you insight in the business, to give you a benchmark, and to give you a way of tracking going forward. So still back at the beginning, if you've got it set up, and I hope you're hearing loud and clear, don't move on until you've done that. But the internal audit, and this is where you really look around you, or you and your team look around you in your business. So let's start with energy. What would you be looking at? This is where you establish, the first part there is how much. This is where the energy is being used, or the rest of it. So you will look at equipment, lighting, heating, and refrigeration, usually in terms of energy. In some businesses, you may also be looking at transport around a site or something like that. And you start to look item by item to actually log, okay, we have, there's a washing machine. This is the kilowatt hours it used. This is how often it's on in the business. This is who's in charge of running it. And you actually start to see, okay, there's an oven that I've noticed is going on at 8 o'clock in the morning, but nobody's cooking anything until 11 o'clock in the morning. You start to see things where you can make a change. These are just checklists right now. In waste, you would be looking at bins around the business. You would be monitoring the type of waste that's in the bins, how people are using the bins, and you'd also be looking at the collection area to see what's happening, where you're being charged, and are you minimizing that as well. Water, all water using appliances and all fittings like taps and showers and toilets. And food waste, the preparation area, spoilage that is arising, and plate waste as well. So the reason I'm listing these like this, not that I think you can actually go away and look at all of those at once. You can't. I'm emphasizing again, look at them one by one. But when you go into the resources that are there, you will have a step-by-step through each one of these for each of the areas you're looking for. They will be explained in very straightforward terms and in a way that you'll be able to action them yourself. So here's an example of an energy equipment audit. Again, these sheets are available. You might look at, it's a simplistic one, you might look at your kitchen, fridge, freezer, air conditioning unit, extractor fan, and dishwasher. And what you are literally filling in is the rating, the number of hours it's on a week, which allows you to calculate a year, your annual use, your average unit price, and your annual cost. And then you start to see which pieces of equipment are costing me the most, because they will ultimately rise to the top of your priority list. And you will also be able to see, if I have a very old fridge, for example, you'll be able to look at the specs of new fridges and see, okay, this one is costing me this many kilowatt hours in a year and this price. And if I changed it, you know, if it's an old one, it's definitely going to cost less. I'm going to save X amount a year. How long then before I've made back the price of the investment? In some cases, it can be really short and well worth it. It makes your decision easy. Here's again, a fictional example, but you can see there, surprisingly, a fictional example based on fact, for example, that the annual cost, one of the highest there is the fridge and the extractor fan. Okay, so the PC is negligible compared to the rest of them, so don't be worried about changing your PCs, but you may start looking at your extractor fan and your fridge and see, is there a more efficient model, for example. There's many stories circulate about grills, for example, in hotels where the rotary toaster, you know, was costing an awful lot, and once they were replaced with a pop toaster self-serve, it practically eliminated the cost that we're going with toasters. So there's lots of examples of that. This again gets you behind the data and again allows you to make a decision based on fact rather than hunch or recommendation by somebody outside your business. Once you know which equipment and operations use the most energy or water or generate the most waste, you can determine the best ways to cut that use without impacting the business or visitor experience. And that's a key takeaway. Until you know this, you're just making decisions in the dark. So really spend the time in getting behind it. Human behavior is one of the biggest variables in any business. It's huge in terms of leaner and greener. This is just, it's a classic example. This one was written up, I'd say, at least 10 years ago by Green Hospitality Ireland, but it's just highlights, it's still the same, even if the figures might be different. If a kitchen porter leaves the pot wash sink tap on with no stopper for 5 minutes every hour, which is quite conceivable, that's 1,700 litres per day wasted, etc., up to 620,000 per year, costing 1,800 per annum if it's hot water, if it's 1,800 per annum if it's cold water, and up to 10,000 if it's hot water. So that's an example of human behaviour we can all imagine that happening. We may be guilty of it ourselves, and actually, when you start looking at the data, this is the impact that might have. Day-to-day changes in staff behaviour in energy, for example, can just take up to 10 to 15% off your energy costs. And that's things like when you switch things on and off, the amount of water you use when you're washing or cleaning, lots of different areas, how waste gets segregated, how food waste is handled, how meat is trimmed, for example. Lots and lots of things come down to human behaviour. So having a look around and just observing, okay, what is everyone doing? Without blaming, without intervening, without doing anything, just as an audit. What's actually happening around my business? How do people engage with stuff? You'll be really surprised what you notice. Once you have all that gathered, and again, you'll find templates in there to just help you log that as well. So analyze the outcomes of your audits is the next thing. What jumps out as a priority area? You'll see, for example, the extractor fan might have jumped out in that example before. Share the outcomes with your team, brainstorm solutions, and broadly estimate the costs and resources required to do anything about it. So that's again, it's just a step-by-step approach. Take the actions with the lowest cost and the highest impact first. And this is really, really, really important. A lot of the conversation around sustainable actions and going greener, I hear it all the time. People just have a fear of how much money they will be asked to invest in order to make an impact. And there are a lot of things that are high investment. Like solar panels, or like changing your heating system or something like that, or like a biodigester if it's food. They're not the places to start. They're like much further on your journey. They're at the advanced level of a journey. Well, maybe it's not absolute to say they're not the places to start. They may not be the places to start. They're not the place to start for every business. This is a simple matrix. If you imagine all the potential actions you could take fitting into one of these boxes, some things are high impact, some things are low impact. Some things are easy to implement and others are very challenging to implement. So you need to have a look and kind of categorize things. If you see actions that are easy and high impact, they are the ones to do first. They are absolutely the ones to do first. Easy and low impact aren't necessarily the best to do, but they might be great to get your staff going or to get a team going to start seeing some impact from getting engaged in this. Challenging and low impact would be the last area of things. So if something's really challenging, low impact, it almost falls off the list, I think, from my point of view, and I've heard businesses say that as well. But the challenging and high impact and the easy and high impact, they're the ones to really focus your attention on. You want impact in terms of cost, you want impact in terms of carbon in a quantifiable way that you can actually speak about, and eliminate things that are just too hard or don't have low impact or don't have high impact. For example, here's low cost or no cost investment, introducing a strict switch off policy and training your team, displaying switch on and switch off times on each piece of equipment, displaying the preferred temperature setting on pieces of equipment, and making a list of the older equipment that has to be replaced first as and when you get to replacing. There are things that you can do within your existing resources. It's not how long would it take to print up some stickers that go on every piece of equipment that tell people when to switch them on and off, and do a half-hour training for everybody on why that's important. That's possible. That will have huge impact in terms of your usage over time as well. More high impact or high cost and more challenging in terms of research and getting comfortable with them are something like renewable options. So these have a cost and an actual outlay. Increasingly, there's grants and support available from this, and banks are obviously helping with that. There's other types of things, but you have to make the case. Here's an example of investing in things like solar. Generally has a payback time of 4 to 6 years, thermal technology 2 to 5, a heat pump 5 to 8, biomass boiler 5 to 8. So then again, you have a decision. If this is going to cost me €100,000, it's going to take 4 years before I've actually paid back that €100,000, and I'm starting to see the costs in my business. And then you're on an upward curve. You're actually, there's a point at which your solar, for example, is actually free electricity after you've paid the initial investment. So that's the way to consider whether or not things are worth investing in. Start with the, I would say, low cost, high impact, and then start doing the research about the higher cost, higher impact activities. And then at that stage, you're able to design an action plan. Here's it's a simple sheet. I highly recommend writing your actions down, because you want more than one person involved in these. And even if you're a single person business, you're going to draw on other resources for this. Writing down your actions, who's responsible for them, when they'll be done by, and any kind of notes. A simple thing, check the temperatures in all fridges in the kitchen and set to 4 degrees Celsius. That's a valid, viable action that again is low cost, but high impact. And you'll move them down along, and your deadline, not everything has to be done this month or this year. Many businesses would have a deadline for an investment that they know they won't make for another 3 or 4 years, but they're planning for it. And it's on their action plan, and they know the impact it's going to have. In the PDFs that I shared with you there are loads of ideas. I'm not going to read through all of these now. That's an example of ideas just for water, for example, and it's only an extract from it. There were more. The same with waste. There's several, like one idea is recycling, and it's just step by step, what should I actually do to increase recycling? It will reduce cost, it will reduce your impact. And there's other checklists for waste. From the food waste booklet, you see things, they have broken it down into 4 areas: spoilage, preparation, plate, and other. They are just as simplified down as far as it can go. These are the areas you look at, these are the actions you take, and they're really useful. They're not actually instructions of what you do, they're ideas lists of things that you might do. And it's for you and your team to decide what place they have in your action plan. Are they on your action plan? What timeframes you're going to complete those in, and who's actually responsible. It's only an action plan if it is clear who has to take the action and when that action has to be taken by. So I think it's clear this is a methodology that I promise you it works, but it is a methodology that is kind of, structured. And I think ultimately you want to be ending up with an action plan that everybody and anybody could read, but that is actually actionable, which means somebody is in charge and there is a date by which you do it, and that you're sitting down on a monthly basis or however periodically and reviewing this. More and more people will want to see your action plan. I've mentioned already certifiers, funders, trade partners, consumers I don't think are at the point where they're looking for that, but certainly tour operators and trade are already at that point. So it's really useful once you have it. I just want to mention carbon footprint. I'm not going to go into it in detail. In the Leaner and Greener series, we didn't go to the point of actually calculating carbon footprint. And I would say in the years since we started the Leaner and Greener series, this idea of calculating carbon footprint has come more and more to the fore. We know that all our governments, most governments worldwide, have committed to reducing emissions by 50% by 2030, which now seems just around the corner, and to become net zero by 2050. The pressure is on governments, and governments are going to put the pressure on industry and on homes to actually make that happen. And I think we're likely to see stricter legislation, stricter monitoring, and a requirement to report on carbon footprint from a legislative point of view, but even apart from that, from a trade point of view within the industry. There's been a lot of focus on agriculture worldwide over the last number of years because it's generally regarded as contributing about 1/3 to overall emissions. But travel and tourism would be right in the spotlight, I think, amongst a few industries right behind that. And I think we can expect to see a greater demand to be able to measure footprint. All I'm going to say about it for now is to calculate the carbon footprint. There are a lot of carbon calculators available online. There is talk that we may have one for the island of Ireland within the next year. Not entirely sure if that's the case, but certainly Tourism Ireland are interested in having a unified approach to this. So I would say watch out for that. We don't know if it'll happen, but I sense it probably will. What you're going to need to input to a carbon calculator is the amount of energy used in your business in kilowatt hours, the amount of water used in cubic meters, the amount of waste generated in weight, kg or tons, and the flights and road miles for business-related travel. They're the 4 elements. And again, I'm sharing that for anybody who wants to go and fill out a carbon calculator. This is what you need. It's all the stuff we're talking about in the methodology we've put together. And if you want to monitor it over time, so if you start with a carbon footprint up today, you generally want to see that reduced by the end of 2024 and halved by 2030. That's ultimately what we're talking about. So again, I think as businesses, you will be asked to demonstrate that, which is why your starting point and your methodology for measuring and your endpoint are going to be really, really important. So another reason to make sure that you measure. Measuring really is essential. So there are a number of case studies as well on the Tourism NI website and in other places. And I think everyone is relatively early in their journey. I think we're seeing more and more case studies that have hard facts and data around them, and hopefully that are relatable to businesses like yourselves or to organizations like yourselves as well. I'm just going to speak through a few of them here. This is one from the Tourism NI set of case studies. It's Delata Hotels, and I think it's the Clayton Hotel in Belfast. And this is, for example, built in 1998. It had a complete refurbishment in 2018. They set up the green team, which, as we saw, was on our methodology as well, support it with training and empower the team to identify areas for improvement. So notable actions: there was 450,000 investment in a boiler, a combined heat and power boiler. This eliminated the use of 4 boilers that were there before, and the investment was returned within 18 months. So that's just a good example of how you of real investment and real payback. So within a year and a half, the 450,000 had been recouped because the new boiler was so much more efficient than the original 4 boilers. 150,000 investment in LED lights. It seems like an awful lot to spend in lights, but with a high-speed return of 9 months. So that 150,000, what they mean is that had been saved on their bills within just 9 months. And after that, it's all upward benefit. 35,000 investment in a pool cover with an expected return on investment of 18 months. So at the time of writing the case study, it was in 2023, this business had just invested at that time, but their data would have told them that within 18 months, they would have saved 35,000 on the heating costs of the pool. So it's a really good example of how to make decisions on high impact, high initial outlay cost. It's how you make a case to a bank. It's how you make a case to a funder, and it's the kind of thing that sustainability mentors would be able to help you with. An interesting point there as well. The green team being set up, but supporting the green team with training is important. So the likes of the training that is available through the webinars is a great set of training to show anybody in your team who might be starting with this, because it gives them this step-by-step approach and empowering them to identify areas for improvement. So I mentioned leadership earlier and creating a culture where sustainability is everybody's business. Give thought to how our staff and team, who are most likely to be seeing the best areas for improvement, empowered to identify that. What's the forum for them to communicate that back? Is there recognition for great ideas? Do people have authority to advance ideas? How does that actually happen? Think about formalizing that within your business. And I think recognizing people for the contributions they want to make is a really, really key ingredient. Many organizations, and I think that Clayton would say it as well, find that genuine, meaningful engagement by the business in more sustainable practices is a staff motivator. It's also an attractor for staff. More and more staff are inquiring about this at interview stage, and it is a factor in staff retention as well. So I just wanted to draw attention to the people element of that, for example. This is the Killarney Park Hotel in County Kerry, and this is a Fáilte Ireland case study. And their particular focus of this case study was on waste. So again, the data is really interesting here. Now, I think it probably is a little hard to read, but I'll read some of them. For example, on water, they installed on-site water filtration systems so that they could offer their own still and sparkling water rather than bottles. It cost €4,000. The payback time was 6 months, and the cost saving after the payback period was €10,000 per annum. So they eliminated 52 pallets of glass waste per year. So they're saving 10,000 per annum, and they're also reducing their waste by 30 tons. Really good example of the win-win. They switched from chemical-based products to green clean and non-chemical cleaning product. It cost €5,000, payback time less than a year, and after payback, they're saving 7,500 per year. And not only that, they're preventing harmful chemicals entering the waterways and eliminated over 250 large plastic containers. It takes a bit of time to get this data, but not a lot of time, you know, for somebody to go, well, how many pallets was that actually? And how much does each pallet weigh? Now I have a figure. Now I have something that is credible, that I can share in my action plan, I can share in my policy, I can share in my social media communications. And when trade or customers ask me about our impact, I can say this hand on heart because we know. For example, they changed to digital newspapers and magazines for guests, cost €4,000, took 6 months to pay back, 8,000 reduction in waste collection costs. So the cost wasn't in the paper, it was in the cost of collecting them, their waste collection provider. And they removed 5 tons worth of paper from the hotel each year. Remove single-use toiletries from the bedrooms, cost €10,000 investment, paid back in less than a year, and saving 12,000 per annum after that. 250,000 small bottles of toiletries taken from the waste every year, and the ability to demonstrate to guests that they were serious about sustainability. This is the kind of table, as you take action, that I would encourage everybody to start to fill out. And again, whoever in your team, and if it's yourself, is responsible for doing these calculations, give it the hour or two at some point in the year where you're quiet enough to actually get the facts behind it. I think you can see when you read that how powerful that becomes for the team themselves, for their customers, and for anybody else who might be dealing with them. Hotel Doolin is a hotel in County Clare. They set themselves the target of becoming carbon neutral. So this was a different type of target. It wasn't just about reducing costs, it was about eliminating their carbon emissions entirely. So here is now this again detailed, but things they did, like they switched to a green electricity supplier in 2017. No cost whatsoever, but 100% carbon reduction at that point. It's the single easiest thing you can do to reduce your carbon emissions in terms of ease. If you're not with a green electricity supplier, switch and you have reduced the carbon footprint element of that for you. They switched from oil to air to water system. They were able to do a lease deal with the supplier, which meant they didn't spend anything initially. There was no outlay initially. They have the option to buy. They lease for the moment and the option to buy. They reduced their oil consumption by 68% in year one and their energy costs by 20% a year. So the biggest saving there was 32 tons of carbon emission per year. They switched to bio-LPG, a small increase in price, but 104 tons forecast for 2022 at the time. So in that case, there's an example, because their goal was carbon neutrality, they were okay to accept the increase in price in order to achieve the carbon reduction. And then they also mentioned process and behavioral change products. So getting people to modify their behavior, mainly staff, but also visitors. So staff training on portion sizes, waste segregation, switching off equipment, installing aerators and showers and hippo bags. Lots of little things make up big impact, as well as the large investment products. I'm just going to draw your attention to some of the other Tourism NI case studies for businesses in Northern Ireland. Larchfield Estate, you can download these on the website, have a read. They're no more than a page each, with some nice images from the businesses as well. This particular business focused very much on the high impact side of the matrix I showed you. So they really didn't spend time on things that they felt were small and low impact. As they could afford to make large investments, they made them. And they felt that was their way forward. So it was a real case of focusing on the high investment, high return type projects. Not a lot of them, a few that really kind of move the needle. And if that's something that appeals to you, have a look at that case study. The Boatyard Distillery in Fermanagh is a B Corp, which is a certified all-round sustainable business, but it's a really good one to use for kind of innovation and imagination in waste. If you have a packaged product, I think it's a really, really interesting one. And of course, staff engagement as well. The Salthouse Hotel, that's another example. Again, they were very much a mindset of sustainability from the outset, but having a look at what you can do in terms of staff, behavioural change, and of course energy investment as well, and the impact that can have. And Earn Water Taxi is interesting because obviously propelling transport takes fuel and energy, so they moved from traditional fossil fuels into solar panels and electric powered boat. So again, the impact of that in terms of what it meant for their costs, but also what it meant for their visitor experience is really interesting. So they're kind of a diverse range of case studies, along with the Delata Group, the Clayton Hotel and the Maldron Hotel in Belfast. They're people in your area. You may well know some of them. They certainly have expertise within their business. But if nothing else, the case studies are a light read and easy to read, and they may provide inspiration for you and your own journey. And a reminder that the other guides and templates are there. These are the workbooks, the step-by-step guide, the spreadsheets, the calculations that are done, and the examples, all there to avail of, really, I would say. So I think I'd be strongly encouraging you to do that, and do them one by one. Do them one by one. Pick the one that you feel is the most important, and then move onward from there. Reminder that that's where you get all of the information at this stage. And I think that's it from my side. I hope there are some questions and comments, and I think I'll stop sharing now for that and hand back to Patricia.
Thank you so much, Tina. Can you hear me okay?
I can, yeah.
Yep. Hi, thanks everyone, and it's so useful to have that all condensed, and as you've mentioned, this is really this is a whistle-stop tour and a chance to refocus, but there's lots and lots and lots more detail on our Leaner and Greener hub on tourismni.com/leaner-greener, where you can find all those case studies and lots of other useful tools and recordings and presentation slides from all of the other sessions that we've had. So do go visit there if you haven't been there yet. Just a reminder to everyone joining us today as well, we'll be sharing a recording for today's session with you all, and you can review it again at your leisure. So almost time for me to share some of your questions with Tina. So if you have a question and you haven't popped it in the chat just yet, this is your opportunity. Just pop it in there now in the questions section on your webinar control panel, and we'll pick up as many as we can. And just before we get stuck into those, we're going to do a couple of very quick polls once again, just to see how useful you found today's session so far. So the first one should pop up on your screen there shortly now, and it's just simply, how would you rate today's session in terms of overall satisfaction? So that's on a scale of 1 to 5, with 5 being extremely satisfied. Just give you a moment to answer that one. And our second poll this afternoon is just to simply rate today's session in terms of the content and relevance to your business. Hopefully we're on the right track for what you were looking for today. Again, that's on a scale of 1 to 5. Okay, and finally, just a very simple yes or no question, and that is, do you plan to take any action within your business as a direct result of what you've heard from Tina today? Okay, thank you so much, everyone. That really is a great help. And as usual, we'll be issuing a short survey via email after the session, along with the link to the recording. So that's our opportunity, not only for you to let us know how you find today, but there's also a chance there for you to share details of anything else you'd like to see in future from the TED programme, whether that's on the leaner and greener topic, or anything else at all. So do please try and take the opportunity to fill that in if you get a moment. So Tina, thank you so much again. Let's get stuck into some of the questions. We've got a few through here this morning. So we have someone here who's saying, I'm spending so much on my energy bills that I don't have money to invest in getting more efficient. What advice can you give? I know you did mention that earlier on. Is there any advice that you can give on that, Tina?
Yeah, I noticed another person in the chat has kind of highlighted that thing there. There is a default, I suppose, assumption that you're going to need to spend money in order to save money. And I hope that some of what we've touched on there highlights that there's a lot that can be done to become more efficient without spending money. And that's the place to start. If cash flow is tight, which I'm sure it is in most cases, that is the place to start. You know, do the internal audit and look at where can I save money through changes in behavior or more efficient use of equipment. And I think they're the two biggest things. The person in the chat, I think it's Jeanette, says, you know, there are lots of good examples of tourism businesses doing that already. I would say there are. I would be talking to others in your industry or in similar businesses, see what they're doing. And not underestimate the value of changing something like the times you switch on and off a piece of machine. If you multiply that by 365 days in a year, or you multiply it by several shifts, or whatever way it works out for your business, you are going to start to see the savings, and hopefully they then start to relieve money. And I know the businesses that have been on this journey over a period of time, say take, you know, a carbon neutral hotel, they started a long way from carbon neutral. It might have been 6-7 years of a journey, and like any business, you have to save the money in order to invest in the next stage. So I would think that just see where can I save money and what does that allow me to invest in from there, and go for the low cost items, the low impact. And in each of the guides that you have there in the energy, waste and water, you mentioned energy for that question, you're going to find 1 or 2 pages of just actions you can take. And I would literally sit down with that with a pen and, you know, cross out things you know are not for you, not relevant for your business, or too expensive right now. And you'll be left with the things that are real actions that do lead to cost savings that you can actually do. And take those back to your kitchen table or to your team and say, okay, how can we do these? You know, how can we do these now? And start, you know, stepping into the responsibility and allowing others to step into that, and just say, okay, you know, there were 50 things they said in that webinar. I'm taking 5, and we're going to do them this year, or we're going to do them this month, depending how small they are. And then you also get to get the wins. People start to feel good. Oh, we did that, and there was that impact in my bill, which is only 2 months. You're going to see the impact pretty quickly. You'll be able to measure the impact, go back to the team. If that worked, what do we do next? And everything builds its momentum. So yeah, that notion that it all costs a lot of money, it's a prevailing notion. I think it's incorrect. When you've done all the low cost, no cost stuff, then you get to looking, okay, we've done all that. We need 30,000 to invest in this. Is it worth it? And then you're into a different type of conversation.
Sure. And we have a couple of questions. They're not quite the same, but they're sort of the same kind of idea. So we have a golf tour operator who is wondering if you had any recommendations on how to reduce fuel usage on coach vehicles. Now they would like to move to electric, but there's limited options. So is there anything at all that they can do to be more fuel efficient in the vehicles they have? And then not quite the same, but a walking tour guide. So they don't have very much of a carbon footprint, but they know that tour operators are bringing guests in private vehicles, and is there any way to influence them to use hybrid or electric vehicles or be more efficient? So sort of similar kind of an ilk of both of those questions there.
Yeah, it's related as well to the previous question. Not starting is not an option anymore. So even if the smallest actions are the ones you take with the smallest impact, it's important to do that, and it's important to be seen to do that. So it's interesting, there's a question there from a business that's reliant on fossil fuels, and there are many of those types of businesses. They're on the water, and they're on the roads, and they're in the air. And so do they do nothing, or is sustainability not for them? I would say no, you can't do nothing. I did work with a ferry company, for example, who thought, well, there's nothing we can do here. But they did look at the speeds at which they traveled the boats at, and what impact that made on consumption. It made quite a significant impact on it. They looked at the engines, they looked at the frequency of servicing the engines. And again, just data driven. If I increase the servicing, what impact is that having on fuel consumption? And you can get that and you'll know is it worth it or not. But equally, if you find out it makes no difference, you can actually still state that in my plan. We've established we're at maximum servicing and maximum efficiency on these engines. Our next step is an electric fleet, but I doubt it's your next step. Your next step might be a more efficient vehicle, a different type of engine. Your long-term step might be the electric fleet. So mapping that out for when trade come to you or anybody comes to you and asks, you're showing an awareness, you're showing you're doing as much as you can do, you're showing you're planning for greater efficiency between now and 2030 or whatever year you send. Driver training is really important. Something like waste on the bus, for example, the use of toilets by the people who are using the bus, the payback to communities for stuff like that, the interpretation of the landscape that you might be going through. All of those things are balancing factors to your emissions. And that's what I was saying at the beginning about here we're talking about tactics for leaner and greener. Really, your story as tourism business is much rounder than that. One of the elements is about reducing your emissions and your costs, but a large amount is about your impact on your community, the quality of your interpretation, the impact your visitors have on the land or the water or the towns that they go into, the culture and heritage and customs that you keep alive. So they're all part of your overall story. So I would say for fuel, do as much as you can and show that you've investigated all opportunities and that you have. I mean, you'll know the future is not going to be in a fossil fuel fleet, but that future is a little way off. So it's plotting the journey from them. The second question there, Patricia, was about, the walking guide who...
Walking tour guide. So they themselves don't really have much of a carbon footprint, but it's tour operators who would use them. And is there any way that they can influence and encourage the people bringing them to use maybe hybrid vehicles or electric vehicles, or just generally look at their carbon footprint, I suppose?
Yeah, there's I suppose you see in different places different ways to do that. I think even communicating your position to tour operators makes them think. So what is it you do as a tour guide? Is there a maximum size on your groups? Is there a payback? Do you only work with food stops that are active in food waste or something like that? So that it says a lot about yourself first. But some of the things people use is they offer discounts. They offer a discount if you arrive with them sustainably, and they describe what that might be. It might mean coming as a group. It might mean coming on an electric vehicle. It may be organising your start point at a place where public transport is available or where there's parking for a large group. It may be I think that's kind of the main thing, I suppose. But I think your group size, if you're dealing with coaches that have large numbers, you do have a question there in terms of the overall, where the look of that is going to be in the future as well, and breaking down into smaller groups and hosting them in that way. But I think to an extent, you see more and more like that outdoor guides. It's as much about their supply chain, who they're dealing with, and it's about laying out your own stall. Here's what I do in my business. Here's the vision I have for my place and my guiding. Here's how you could help. So you're not actually forcing anybody, but you're getting those conversations going. No doubt they're also having the same conversations and they're looking for solutions to the same thing. So I think conversing with them is a really good idea, and showing your leadership on it, showing that you're thinking and being proactive and saying, how can we get a solution here? Often that might be the best thing you can do.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you probably touched on quite a lot of this, but someone here, so if I don't have any building, my energy, waste and water bills aren't very high, is there anything that I can do? And I suppose that's some of the elements of that, but is there anything else you could add to that, Tina?
I would, if you had a sustainability policy or your communications campaign, wherever it is, I would state that. I would state that's where we are. We are low consumption, and we've minimized that as much as possible. And then I would put the impact on where you add more value. In general, I think tourism has a big story in terms of where it adds value. We do a disservice to ourselves if we concentrate the whole sustainability conversation on carbon emissions, because to be honest, we're high on that. I mean, we are, and we know that. And as long as people are going to travel, that's going to be a factor. So what are we doing that brings more benefit to a destination, to a community, to a culture, to heritage? And I would focus your story on that side of things. If you're an outdoor guide, leave no trace is absolutely huge. Accessibility and inclusion, allowing everybody avail of your experience is where you'd be expected to be having positive impact as well. And your contribution and engagement with the communities where you visit, that's the third thing. So if wastewater and energy isn't your edge, then focus on the thing that is your edge.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much. And thanks everyone for all your questions today. I hope you found that a useful session, even if you were joining us again and you were at some of the other ones. I think for me, certainly, even though I've been at all of them, it's sort of that reminder and about the importance of measuring being so essential, and that's sort of the real key thing. So hopefully you can take something useful away, and just a reminder to head to tourismni.com/leaner greener for the fuller sessions from Tina on a lot of those other topics there as well. We'll get the recording from today up online as soon as we possibly can, and we'll share a link with all of you who've joined us today to that once it's ready. And we're also at Tourism and I working away in the background on looking at sort of future sessions, continuing the kind of leaner and greener, I should say, conversation, and looking at options related to biodiversity and climate and things like that. So we hope to be in a position to deliver some new topics in the new year. So keep an eye out for that, and be sure to visit our Tourism Enterprise Development page on the website as well. So if you head to tourismni.com/TED, you can find details on all upcoming TED activity and useful links to most of our recent webinars and events. And just take this opportunity to remind everyone we have our digital hot topics webinars coming up in December. So we're going to be taking a look over the next couple of weeks at embracing AI and also exploring new digital marketing trends. So they're both tailored specifically for the tourism and hospitality industry, and should be full of really useful practical tips for you guys. To hope to welcome some of you back again for that next week and the week after. And full details again for those are at tourismni.com/TED. So thank you so much. And just a massive thank you, Tina, once again for joining us. I think you did the impossible today, putting all that into one session. So well done. And thanks to Barry and Jordan in the background running the polls and keeping us all right and keeping everything flowing. So thank you so much. And finally, just thank you to everyone who's joined us here this morning. Delighted to have so many with us today, and we look forward to welcoming some of you along to more of our upcoming sessions soon. So thank you so much. That's it from today.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Tina. Bye-bye.